16 months. They haven't seen each other in 16 months, and they have to catch up, find out the people who had babies, find out who had some grandchildren, find out who gained weight. Whoops, that's almost everybody. It was kind of like first day of school. Lots of new dresses, lots of new suits were being worn. So I think that, contributed somewhat to our decrease in our efficiency. So I hope to see that increase next week. So we'll see where we go from there. Other than that, it's been a fairly uneventful reopening. On the business licensing side of our DCRA, there's still some things that had to be done by mail that people are coming in for. So just to give you kind of a feel, there were 48 people who came to DCRA for business licensing yesterday, and all but I think a handful of them needed to do something that was through the mail, so they were doing it in person. 15 people came in for the permitting side. 3 of them were people who just thought they might be able to walk one through or find their friend and get moved to the front of the line. I put a kibosh to that, so that didn't happen. There was a couple of folks who, there was actually 3 people who didn't have a computer, so they came down and we directed them to the computers we have available for people. And the others were just stopping by to say hi. And that didn't get them very far either, because we have to keep people working. So that's how the reopening's gone so far. I think it's, for us, it's slowed us down a little bit, but we'll get back on track. Any questions about the reopening that you may have? Okay. The second thing I wanted to talk about, I want to inform you, I should say, we are starting the process of acquiring a replacement for Project Docs. I saw some big eyes there.
Yeah, wow.
We just figured out how to use it.
So the news,
That's a little scary. But I'll yield. I'll wait. Listen to me with the other.
So, we're in the process. We spent the last 4 months testing several different systems. We have selected a system. I can't say who it is until we finish the actual purchase of it, in case something happens during those negotiations. What I can tell you about the new software is a couple of things. One, it's going to be used exclusively by the residential center until we work through all the bugs. Why the residential center? One, I'm the team lead on it, so I'm going to take it on. 2, we have fewer plan sheets generally, right? So there's less opportunity for some huge disaster to go on. And 3, we're just good in the residential center overall. And I think I have the team that can help communicate to me any of the problems we're having so we can improve it. Here's what I can tell you about the new software. And I'm excited about it. Have any of you taken forever and a day waiting for Project Docs to let you load one sheet at a time? Have you been shut out of Project Docs because it just keeps whirling and whirling? All those are caused by, I should say, that it's sitting on a server. And the new software is sitting on the cloud, so we don't have those stops. One of the biggest tests we did with this in terms of stressing it out was a development of townhomes that each plan set was a little over 114 pages. The 114 pages were uploaded in less than 2 seconds because it's uploaded as one file. So 114 pages comes up as one PDF to us, and then the software separates it out for us. So that was one advantage. The second advantage is our notes are put on directly onto the plan, and they're also copied into the notes that get sent back to you. One of the things that was very quick with this software is if I had a problem, let's say on page A03, 03, I didn't like, the wall didn't meet the insulation requirements. You know, I can draw an arrow to the exact wall I am calling out, type on there that it's R403 is missed, and it's the insulation level. And that's how you'll see it. And you can fix it on that sheet. As we get better at that, one of the things that this software allows us to do is there's oftentimes, what should I say, it's just some really small things that have to be corrected. This software would allow us to call you up, share a screen, tell you exactly what we want changed. You would change it, and it would come immediately to the plan reviewer to approve. So one of the requirements that we have is that, or one of the things I want to try to accomplish is we eliminate the PRC function. So if we eliminate the PRC function, we save a couple of days. What I like about that is that probably it's a little over 85% of all plans pass PRC immediately anyway, that there's no back and forth. So if that's the case, I'd rather move that 15% problem to the plan reviewers and save that 2 days.
What is PRC, Mike?
Pardon me?
What is PRC?
That's the plan review coordinators. So when you submit your project into project docs, they then review it and they decide if the sheets are proper or not, and then forward it to us to review. So this system, as we put it together for DCRA, the second reason, or the fourth reason, I guess, for it to go through the residential center is we've been working now for about 8 months on the new residential, excuse me, the residential permit application. Working with that residential permit application and bringing in the new software, what our goal is that, and we're getting pretty darn good at knowing what the project's going to be for people who use the permit wizard for the residential application. We know exactly what the project is. We're going to tell you at the end of that application process to upload your documents then. So you're not going to have to go to wait for an invitation to upload them. It will be part of that process. So you'll make your application, you'll go pay, and you'll immediately be asked to upload the documents. By doing that, if you're organized and you have your plan together, right, you have everything ready, the average time for doing the residential permit application is a little less than 14 minutes now. From permit application to going to the payment portal is another couple of minutes people are spending. And then we'd be asking you to upload. So you're doing that. Let's say it takes an hour to do that. But the upload is going to be very simple because it's only one file. So if it takes 1 hour to do that, in today's system, you do your application, you make your payments, it gets verified that it was paid. You know, we verify that it was paid. You get invited to upload the project docs. So now you apply day 1, you get the invitation day 2 or 3. You upload, that's your own timeline. And then day 4 and 5, it takes for the PRC to review what you uploaded. So we literally can eliminate 4 days, 5 days on our side. So currently on plan review, we had gotten down to an average of 15 days for turning an application for residential permit review. It's gone up a little bit because we've been short some folks and the problems with project docs the last couple of weeks. But there is 4 or 5 days lost before it even gets to us. So the goal is to lose those 4 or 5 days before it gets to us to review. If we're able to do that, that could cut your time by 30%, which leads me to why I want to work with you folks to come up with some really decent checklists. So right now we are working on some very small checklists where we're eliminating the need for people to upload to project docs. And it's on very, very small projects. If you're doing a fence repair or fence replacement, you're going to be asked to upload your documents right then. And we're going to tell you we want pictures, we want the plat, and just an easy little description of what you're doing. You can write it out on a piece of cardboard as far as we're concerned. So we're putting together in terms of this, making this application smart, that based on what people are saying, we're starting to make a checklist on the background that says, hey, let's ask them for these 3 items and move it straight through and interrupt this spot for the PRC and uploading the project docs. So we're starting that process of making the application smart to know what to do. And that's working pretty well. So we've expanded, we're now going to expand some of those questions so we can bring more through that system. But that's the start of us starting to learn how to handle these projects without going through the PRC. I don't know. What do you think of that idea?
So it's going to ask us specific questions when we're doing a fence, but let's say we're doing a remodel and we've got to prepare a set of plans. Is it going to play into that and tell us what the set of plans is going to require, or we're
no, what I want to do there, yeah, it's a good question. So right now, since we're trying, you know, we're working around project docs, right? We're saying, hey, here's what we want set up. You're still going to be in control of your plan set. But what I do want is the plan set having checklists. So I'm doing a basement remodel, and here's the things we really, you know, you ought to make sure you're sending to us, right? And it's something you have for prepping yourselves. It's not anything official that you have to do, but we're just saying, here's the things you need. So for instance, I don't know the outcome of it yet, but I just had run a report run for me of what are the hold for correction comments for the last 6 months on residential applications. And I want to see what that looks like. So if I can figure out what are the problems, right, that we reject and send back for correction, if I can figure out what those are, that gives us a good place to start saying, you know what, when we do a checklist, we really got to make sure we highlight this item. So something a lot of people forget is all the different times you have to have a plat and what you should do with that plat. So if that becomes, and I suspect it'll be one of the top 10, if that's the case, you know, we can say, hey, listen, when you're doing a new deck on the backyard or an addition, you know, here's your plat and here's the things you need to make sure you call out on that plat. So if we can, you know, with that information, we can figure out what are the biggest problems. We make sure those end up on the checklist. Because wherever I can eliminate that kind of stuff for you folks, it makes it easier for us as well, right? So I think that will help guide us on what kind of checklist to put together.
But wouldn't that be tied to the levels 1, 2, and 3, which I think seem to be, that's where we run into some of the biggest challenges.
Did you plant that question with her? Michael and I talked about this. I think that's a planted question.
I think it's a very good question, Shirley. And I do want to talk about alteration level 1, 2, and 3, because when I do reviews of my team, that is also one of the places we make a large number of errors and that we have to do better at. And I can tell you, I think it's rather simple, right? But it's a hard thing for some folks to grasp. And some folks who work for me have a hard time grasping that. So I do want to talk about alteration level 1, 2, and 3. But it really doesn't change a lot when we look at it. The biggest thing that, well, I'll go into it. I think it's a good segue. We'll go to it right now. Let me share my screen. I don't think you're seeing what I want you to see.
Here, let me see if I can fix
Yeah,
it.
your host might have to give you capability.
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Somehow I've changed my screens about.
Okay, try now. Does that work for you?
Let me try putting it on a different screen.
You should be okay because I've added that you can do that now.
Yeah, I've got double screens. You should
Okay.
be seeing it now, shouldn't you?
Not yet.
Oh, because it's in the nice little outlined area. Let me see what's going on. Here's what I'm going to do.
There you go.
Bringing it back to a different screen now. There you go. Should be fine now, right?
Yes, thank you.
And now I'll get it a little bigger for us. And I'll send this over. So for alteration level determinations, there's just some important definitions, and that's really where we need to start and we need to get correct. And the first one, these definitions are coming out of 12J, that's the existing building code supplement. One of the things that causes great grief for people is trying to figure out what is the work area. And when we look at the definition, I think it's mostly there, but I do understand why people get a little confused at times. And the work area is that portion or portions of a building consisting of all reconfigured spaces as indicated on the construction document. What I think is important to add is the next sentence. Work area excludes spaces reconfigured solely to facilitate mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, or fire alarm systems. So that work area, if you are, I don't know how much conversion work there is from boilers to forced hot air and AC and DC, but if you were doing that, you wouldn't be counting the entire house as part of the work area as you put in the ductwork. The final piece of that is the work area excludes other portions of the building where incidental work entailed by the intended work must be performed in portions of the building where work not initially intended by the owner is specifically required by this code. So one of the things that gets a lot of people tied up, let's say we have a typical home, first floor, living room, dining room, kitchen. Somebody's decided to blow out the back and push out the kitchen. At the same time, they want to go to an open concept. So they take out the center wall. And let's say they take out the wall between the dining room and the kitchen as well. So you take out that wall. The impact on that building is probably half of, for the alteration part, is half of that first floor. Because that center wall is being taken out to open up to the dining room and the kitchen where the other work is being done. So when you're trying to, what we do, what I'm trying to teach us to do, is that the work area, when you go to an open concept, unless you're doing work in that living room, let's say that was the front of the house, that square footage doesn't get counted in. And I think that's a change in how we've approached that. But the work area, I think, is an important component. If
Does
you're
the work
making-
area relate to the permit cost?
No.
No.
The work area is going to be directly tied to which alteration level it is.
Okay.
And that's why that's the biggest thing. As
The
far as-
size of the work is the size of the work area
Yes.
determinative?
Yes. So that we're going to continue on that path, because that is also one of the things that I noticed was there was some confusion. So the area of the building, I put that in there just because it gets talked about in some places, but it's the area included within the surrounding exterior walls. This has become an issue when people are putting a, where is this an issue? You have a house and somebody decides to put an accessory dwelling unit. You put the accessory dwelling unit out in the middle, out towards the alley. It's not part of that area building, it's another area building. So this really impacts folks who have a garage as an accessory dwelling unit and they decide to put a an accessory building, and they decide to make an accessory dwelling unit in the second floor of the garage. So that area building is that accessory unit, accessory building, the garage. The work being done is the second half, the top floor of that garage that's being converted to an accessory dwelling unit. That's where that area building really gets to be important, because that will trigger a 50%, the 50% rule. And we'll talk about the 50% rule here shortly. So 2015 IEBC, alteration level 1. Alteration level 1 include the removal and replacement or covering of existing materials, elements, equipment, fixtures, using new materials, elements, equipment, and fixtures that serve the same purpose. And oftentimes, I think that's the bulk of your work, right? You're not taking out a lot. You're not taking out walls. You're changing out kitchens or changing out bathrooms. Anything in alteration level 1 has to comply with the provisions of Chapter 7. The most important, the most significant thing to keep aware of in Chapter 7, and I'm not going to go through the whole chapter, but the most significant piece is what are the requirements for energy conservation. So anything you change has to meet the energy code. So for example, if you're doing an alteration level, if you're doing a remodeling project, and part of that remodeling project is to replace the heating and cooling system, that heating and cooling system will have to meet the energy code. That's a change. If it has to meet it for level 1, it has to do it for level 2 and 3 as well. Alteration level 2, this is where the majority of the work gets done. Alteration level 2 includes reconfiguration of space, the addition or elimination of doors, windows, the reconfiguration or extension of any system, or the installation of additional equipment. So it includes the reconfiguration of space. So that example where I said you took out the center wall of a house, and you put in an LVL and you lifted it into the ceiling, so you have this nice, beautiful open concept. That's a reconfiguration, but you're still at level 2 of an alteration. Just because you're working, doing something with a load-bearing wall does not make it an alteration level 3. That, I think, I hear that oftentimes is our mistake and our customer's mistake.
What about an addition, a small addition?
An addition is separate from an alteration. So if you're doing, let's say you have a 1,500 square foot house, you're putting on a 300 square foot addition. The addition has to meet the rules for additions. Any other work you do in the rest of the house is an alteration. And that's going to be determined based off of these rules. So I think the thing we see most often is what? A 2 or 3 or 400 square foot addition to push out the kitchen, create a family room, whatever. And then remodeling the kitchen, remodeling the dining room, and maybe remodeling some bathrooms. When you're doing the square footage, the addition is not part of the existing house. So when you figure out what alteration level you're dealing with only the part that's the alteration, not the addition. So you really see it as 2 separate projects. That's also important when you say how much it costs to do the work. So additions, the permit fee is based off of the square footage for additions. The permit fee for alteration and repairs is based off of the cost of the alteration and repair. So if you're doing a $200,000 project, but $75,000 of it applies to the addition, when you answer the question about what is the cost of construction, you would subtract that $75,000 for the addition, bring it down to $125,000 because that's the alteration cost. That saves your customer roughly $1,500.
Some of the reviewers make us change the price back to a higher price from time to time.
Yeah, I would wonder where the sort of oversight is on that, because it seems kind of to be all over the place.
Well, it's on my to-do list. I have not gotten to there yet. I do know that we have some problems there. And essentially what, in talks with Garrett and Chris Bailey, here's how I do it. Somebody calls and complains because they feel like their fees got handled incorrectly. And maybe it was in this back and forth. I do a fairly simple check. If you're doing an alteration of the building and an addition, because that's oftentimes where I see the difference. I take, if the addition is 50 square feet, I mean 500 square feet, I look at what part of town it is, and I roughly use $150 or $200 or $300 or $400 a square foot to just see if it passes a smell test for me. And if it does, it's pretty easy for me to say, yeah, you're right, we'll make that adjustment. If it seems way off, then I'll have to dig into it a little bit, or I may ask you for some justification. But as a rule,
all good.
so as a rule, I think people get overcharged who are doing additions and alterations because of that cost, how they put the cost in. As a rule, most people don't cheat on what the cost of construction is. Most people don't. So what I am attempting to do, or I will attempt to do, I should say, is to kind of come up with some better guidance that says, listen, if they're doing X amount, if they're doing X work, and they say it's $50,000, that's close enough. And let it go from there.
Now, aren't you asking though for us to submit a copy of our contract for the
Yeah.
project?
So part of the code is that you submit a cost estimate for your work. And that's what I just go and look at.
I have a question around that. I have a question on that.
Mhm.
So, you know, from the time of that submittal of that, this is Ruben in Manor Park, and from the time of that submittal of that estimate, you know, we do it in DCRA's format
For a long time,
the
I've
thing
always
is the
said
plans
DC
the
themselves
plan,
are confused with how they
Excuse
charge
me,
projects.
Kay Heming, can you
submitted.
please mute yourself?
I'm sorry.
No
Is it-
problem.
No.
Sorry,
So
sorry.
this is something
Thank you.
I've really been trying to speak with someone at DCRA about. I mean, we submit that cost early, and things may change in the plan. You know, in it, additionally, you know, through the estimating for a $200,000 job, it's an ongoing process. There's materials that we have to select. So when we submit that cost estimate, we haven't even picked out the jacuzzi tub or, you know, or whatever the case may be, and that may change my costs. So I think it's and then also making a sign off on it. I mean, you know, that's I don't know what, you know, that I feel like I'm stuck with that number, you know.
So that's a legitimate issue. It's something that I think we have to figure out a better way, right? So we have in the current code that we need a construction estimate. So I just did a review of 2 or 3 projects, and in each of the cases, your estimate was in there. And then somebody saying, hey, you need to use our form. We absolutely don't need to use our form. In fact, I don't want you to use our form if you've got your own contract or estimating costs. That needs to be sufficient.
Yeah, we've been asked to use that form. So now I just use that form all the time because
Use your own cost estimate sheet. That one I can get fixed, I think, quickly, because I hadn't seen that until recently. And I was like, what the heck are we doing? So that's one I'm confident I can get fixed.
Can
But
I
in terms
clear
of-
up one point? When you say estimate, there's an estimate and then there's what I sell the job for to the customer that are 2 different numbers. Are we really talking about estimate versus contract?
Well, it doesn't have to be a signed contract by code. Okay, so that's the other thing I had to get clarified with with a lot
Right.
of people.
Right. And guys, I don't want to keep chiming in and stuff, but I think one other thing, and I'll put myself on mute again. This is Ruben. I mean, I've really, and when this first hit us a year or two ago, just signing off on a number at the early part of this, just signing off on it. I haven't gone to contract with them. There could be additional things that aren't a part of the plan set and what we're doing. I mean, we could be adding stuff to the contract. And so at the end of the day, I have to tell my customer, hey, even though we're submitting this officially to DCRA, don't pay too close attention to it, because I'm going to be giving you something else. And that's where it makes our job harder. I'm done.
I agree. So there's two fixes, right? The first fix is based on the current code. How do we handle the fee structure, because it's based off of the cost of your work? So the solution for me here is, I think, rather simple. You're not going to have a contract before you have a plan set approved either, right? But you're going to have an estimate. You're going to tell, you're going to have a somewhat broadly itemized estimate, granted, for your customer, but they're going to know, this kitchen's going to cost you $30,000. This deck's going to cost you 20. The two bathrooms are worth 15,000. You've got that kind of estimate. The new heating, air conditioning system is X. You have all that stuff, and that's good enough for the estimate for the initial fee structure. And so that's the first thing, that has to be good enough.
Okay.
And then secondly, it has to have some kind of a rule for passing a spell test.
That's fine.
And
Yeah,
that's
roll
what
them up. I'll look at them.
we got somebody talking over us. I don't know who it is.
John Wyman.
So I'm trying to come up with what is that kind of guidance. And I think we can get better at it. The second piece of that is, in the existing world today, you can change that at the time you pull the permit, right? So you can make that adjustment with the issuance people. Third thing is, if something dramatically goes wrong, and I just had a customer who was in here who had a permit issued. They were going to do $300,000 worth of work, and the customer lost their job. So they decided only to do $150,000. So they had $150,000 in alterations that they didn't do. That was over $3,000 in fees. So we worked it out and got them a refund for that different amount. I don't think that happens often, but I do think that when we move forward into the future, that we include that. So one of the things, and Chris Bailey's actually working on it, one of our goals for the next code cycle, so that doesn't help you today, it doesn't help you next year, but it helps you in 2023, is that for alterations and repairs, how do we figure out how to make it a cost based off of the square footage that you're doing work on? It's how we figure out the cost for additions and new builds. So there's a lot of work being done. I don't know if any of you are interfaced with Robert Simpkins, but right now he's going through the nation, looking at a variety of different fee structures. And one of them is we're trying to find the folks who have alteration repairs off of some kind of fixed cost. Maybe it's a bathroom is $150. I don't know what we're going to end up with, but that would make it easier that we wouldn't have to go through this whole contract thing. It would be based off the work scope. It would be a set price, and that's what it is. So if you're doing a $15,000 bathroom or a $5,000 bathroom, it was the same cost. That's where we'd like to be for 2023's.
Mike, I can share with you that Montgomery County, their fee for alterations is a square foot number. So it's the same fee, whether it's a $5,000 or $15,000 bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's an easy way to do it. I mean, we've got plan sets that give us pretty darn close on square footage, and the square footage you're hanging out in. Whoever is your estimator, they've already figured that out, especially if they're doing trim. So I think in the long run, that's where we'll be. But right now, I just have to work at making sure, one, that we're not requiring you have to use our form. You can use your own estimating form. And two, that, you know, I just want to come up with a few numbers that are easy smell tests, that we've got essentially the right numbers. I mean, I had somebody in here who was complaining about their feet costs, and they were doing a brand new deck that was 15 by 30, and they said it cost $1,000. Heck, you can't buy the materials. You probably can't buy the fasteners for $1,000 for that size of a deck, right? So that's an easy one to find. But if you came in and said it was a $25,000 deck, or you said it was $20,000 deck or $30,000 deck, that would, even though it's a $10,000 difference, that passes the smell test, right? So that's what I'm going to try and come up with. But quite honestly, that'll be probably winter.
Can I ask you a question about walkthrough permits as defined here on your required plan review approvals? You know, we have a couple of bathrooms sometimes and we get a permit in a day or 2 days.
Mhm.
But we got one sitting in there for almost a month and it's a bathroom. I don't know what to say. Well, I mean, what is a walkthrough permit?
Well, it's a digital walkthrough. Let me ask you a question before I try and answer that. I need to, excuse me a second, my sister-in-law's father, my brother-in-law's father just died. I want to send him a quick note. Okay, I'm sorry. When you submit your application for permits for residential work, which application process are you following?
Melvin?
We're putting it through the permit wizard.
Okay, good. So that helps. If you ended up having one that went 30 days, there's a foo bar somewhere, right? We screwed up. Something got screwed up somewhere, and it shouldn't have happened. Because a bathroom would be one of our digital walkthroughs.
And can you explain that again? That is a permit wizard.
Yeah.
So it's not your access. You don't apply through access.
Don't apply through ACA. You're still going to have to go through Access DC, right, to start?
The application, the actual application.
Yeah, here, give me a second. I'll show it to you real quick on the screen.
The permit wizard is a pretty cool tool when it works properly. But
I would tell you it works pretty darn good all the time. I have a lot of ownership to it.
You're partial to it.
Hour every day looking at every permit application.
Oh, great.
But I think it's poorly worded, right? It says DCRA permit wizard, and that's for residential 1 and 2 family homes. And that's the process. You should click on that. It's going to give you a little explanation. You're still going to have to log into Access DC.
Create an account for the permit wizard, all that good stuff.
Well, the account is the same as Access DC.
I had to set up like 5 different accounts when I set mine
Oh,
up.
wow.
Checking to see if any of my plans are there. So there's one there. So this is the permit wizard. So you go, you click on that, you click on it the second time, you go to Access DC, and then you'll go to your projects and you just create a new project here. The nice thing about it is that I like is, one, you can label it whatever you want to label it. You're still going to have a permit application number, but for your own, your own self, how many numbers can you memorize? You can call it whatever you want. But that's the place to go. And if it took more than a week to get that kind of bathroom permit, we messed up somewhere. Don't know how to put it any other way. Drop me a note. Is it still in review?
It's still in review.
I
Yes.
sent you one that's over 30 days, still in review. I've emailed the reviewer 2 days ago, 3 days ago. He hasn't responded. All I need is just 2 approvals. I have one, and I've been waiting over 30 days for the other.
Depends on the work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can talk. I'd be happy to.
Just drop me an email.
Will do.
It looks like there's no clear definition between a walkthrough permit and a project docs or an extended review time permit.
And just to add to that, is there a way? Because it's just this. Is there a way that we as the applicant can at least have a better understanding on which box or which track our project is on? It just feels like there's just this big hole. We apply, whether it be through Wizard, through whichever means, and we just kind of, we know it's in the hole and we're just kind of sitting and waiting. But it would be very beneficial to us if we could at least get a better understanding of what track and how that track is faring. I don't know if we could ever get to that point, but that would be valuable to us on our end.
So we want to do that too, because that's part of the work we have to do to eliminate the PRC function, right? Here's what I can tell you. I ran through 100 of those. We put together a schedule that said, hey, if this question gets answered, this, put it in this bucket and put it in this bucket. We had, when we did that, out of those 100 cases, we had 47 that said, hey, it should be in the digital walkthrough. Out of the 47, 21 of them, the person who applied flat out lied about the work. So you folks may do it all right, but almost half of the people lie as to work they're doing so they can think they can get through a walkthrough. That's our problem, right? How do I filter that out? And there's ways that I think we can do that. And part of it is we're all gonna have to hold hands and jump off this bridge together one day. But I was shocked at how many people lied on their permit applications. I mean, I was blown away by it. I know some people stretch it every once in a while. Heck, I probably did in my lifetime. But maybe it was that group, I don't know. But that's what we're battling.
Mike, is there a connection between the inspectors when they come out to do their first inspection and what was applied for? So, let's say somebody really outrageously lied and the inspector gets out there and sees what's really happening.
Once it gets through plan review, it's not often that the plans aren't being built properly. In most cases, they're doing the work that they said they were doing. It's very small. The bigger problem is getting through the application process and what people say they're going to do versus what the plans say. And that's what.
So they lie about it and then they give you a set of plans that shows something else?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that was
along with liars, they're stupid too.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that's why I said at some point, we're all going to have to hold hands and jump off this bridge together, right? Because we do want to be able to have you go through. We're trying to refine now that as you go through the permit wizard, at the end, you see the price of your, the price of your permit, right? And here are the kinds of inspections you're going to need. So we're really trying to refine that inspection list, which is really a tough job. The more we've worked on it, we continue to refine it. We're going to have a new release of some of the changes that we've learned. But taking that learning about putting together, the package of what's going to need to be inspected, it's also work that'll tie into us being able to say at the end, hey, this application qualifies for an immediate upload of your project. So if you're doing a bathroom remodel, that should be one where you upload pictures, you upload plan sheets, a couple of plan sheets, simple ones, and it's turned in a day or 2 days at the most. So I just had Mr. Bogle is the one who gets those kinds of things. But he was doing a review of projects, and for some reason, we had 5 bathroom remodels get through in the last week for our application process. Only 3 of them got captured to go the direct upload from the application. So we turned the permit in probably 2 days. So we don't know why those 2 that didn't come through, we don't know yet why, but we're going back to find those applications and see what happened. But all 5 of them should have acted the same way based off of the actual work. I don't know why that happens. We're trying to figure it out. That's the bottom line, trying to figure it out.
Well, as long as we know what you're looking for when we're doing this, we can help you identify these problems.
Yeah, well, this one is that, this whole question about the bathroom, that is flat out about our, the development team was putting together the wizard. Or there was something clicked somewhere else that triggers it differently, right? It could be when we go look at it that the 3 that came through, we run it through a couple of different databases. It's running through the age of the building. It's running through for lead paint and all. It's running through as a historical set, it's in the historical district. Is it in the White House district? Is it in CFA, whatever? All those things could change the pathway for it. I just don't know what caused those 2 to go, but I know it's a problem and we'll fix it.
I have a question. When do you estimate the switch is going to be from Project Docs to the new software?
Oh,
Because it sounds like the new software is going to fix a lot of the problems you guys are having, and we are.
I think it'll absolutely, I agree with you. We'll fix one of the problems. I know we have an internal deadline to go full on for the residential permits by the end of October. I would guess in reality, we're probably looking at January 1, because it's always more complicated than we think, because there's a lot of integration work we have to do. But I can tell you, as soon as they sign the contract, our head of IT and myself, that is our #1 task between now and whenever it rolls out. It is a high priority item.
And is there going to be a beta phases where you guys are going to invite contractors to that? Is there a way we can be on a waiting list or?
Yeah. When I get ready to do the beta, I'll start asking for volunteers. But before I ask for volunteers, I have to, we have to put together, here's the different things we want to look for. We want people who are doing only new construction, we want new construction, single family, 2 family, we want, attached, detached. I mean, we'll have to put together the kinds of projects we're looking for, and then we'll go out and find volunteers. It's what we did with the permit wizard.
I'd like to ask one more question.
Mm-hmm.
This question regarding the discussion pertaining to level 1 and level 2 alterations. If this is a conversation that has to do with group or occupancies, residential work, why are we talking about level 1 or level 2 alterations? These terms are only defined in the International Existing Building Code, not the International Residential Code.
Because if you have an existing building, if you have an existing home, code also resides in the International Existing Building Code. So the process, the plan review process that we need to follow is to first identify what is the work. So if it's a work on an existing building, that's the first question. Oh, it's an existing building. I've got to determine now, is this an addition, or is it alteration and repair, or is it both? Depending on what that is, I have to the plan reviewer has to determine what level of alteration it is, because it does change the requirements of things we're going to look for in the IRC. So there's not a whole, it's a good question you ask, because the existing building code is important for existing buildings because it gives you also some real good coverage. And you have to know what that alteration level is. So for an alteration level 3, if it's an alteration level 3, you have to put a sprinkler in all the areas you worked on, part of the code. So we have to go look at that. There's exceptions to that. If you can show that the existing water service can't handle it, which means you have to do two different reports with the DC water, then you don't have to. You have an exception for it, but you have to prove that you have that exception. If it's
It sounds like
alteration,
this is done as a check or a balance to what we're submitting then.
well, it's a check as for us to know what codes to enforce.
Okay.
I mean, that's really the thing, right? It gives a guidance. There's a funnel here. If it ends up being an alteration level 2, I know I don't have to, do any math about figuring out if it should have a sprinkler system or not. Or if they do, where is it? And there's other things within alteration level 3s that you have to do versus alteration level 2s versus alteration level 1. But this is, it seems, here's the advantage of the existing building code, for example. The existing building code has a section in chapter 4 that if you are in a home and you're redoing the stairs and they're 28 inches, you don't have to redo, you don't have to change it. It's flat out in the code.
Is that the 2017 District of Columbia Building Code, Chapter 1,
It's in chapter 4.
Chapter 4?
Yeah.
Because he's quoting a code here that this is one of our real smart people, one of our real smart designers that's asking this question. So I want to make sure I get it right when I report back to him.
Oops. I don't know if I got it. No, there we go. This is a guidance document. It's an internal document that I work with my folks on. Stairways in existing homes are unable to meet the DC building construction codes. I get a ton of code mods for this, so I'm sending them back. If you look at section 704, means of egress 704.1, alterations shall be done in a manner that maintains the level of fire protection provided. Bingo. That is the place. That is the code citation that says if you've got stairs that are 28 inches, you don't have to change the width when you're doing alteration level, is because you're maintaining the same level of fire protection. Now, if you put up some new wall, that's a game changer. But I think that's an important component of the existing.
What if the stairs are going to be new?
The stairs are going to be new. You got to do it at the code level because that's a new code.
Okay.
But if it's replacing existing stairs, this covers you.
So replacing in kind, you don't have to bring it up to, I follow you there.
Okay. But that's why the existing building code is so important. Because I know we were telling people, hey, you have to get a code mod. And every time I looked at it, it's like, why is it sitting in front of me? And why has it been sitting here for 2 weeks? It's not necessary. Get it out of here. And I may have been rude to a couple people. I said, no, you don't need to do this. Just cite this. But that's why the existing building code is important. It's a tough building code. I mean, it just hasn't been used much. So in September, I'm doing a training on the significant changes for the residential code. for the 27th.
Can you bring that back up that you were on, that IEBC real quick? I was writing something down.
No way. Let me see if I can find it. I might have.
Actually, is there a way you can send that to us?
No. That's an internal document. I can't share it. But when we're doing checklists, this is the kind of stuff that we can include in there.
So,
But those are codes you need to know. So in September, I'm doing the IRC, significant changes. And then September, October, November. It's probably December that I'm going to do an existing building code, because it's an important code and we don't use it often enough to, one, help get stuff done, and two, not, old homes have their own problems, right? And that existing building code is there to help.
so Mike, I think we're running out of time here, and I hope everybody's getting the idea that these checklists are an important next step. And as we get into it, we're going to get into the weeds really quick. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle it, Mike, but we just need to start working on them. And as we get into this, this group of people, you're showing interest in it. So people who show interest get drafted. And we're going to look to you for help and flushing these checklists out and really getting into the weeds with each of these things. Like, as you were talking about that, the thought came to mind, well, what happens if I'm putting on an addition that has to go through that altered space? Do I have to bring the stairs up to code for access to that? So anyway, there's a lot of details. We had wanted to talk about current events in this meeting, and we had a building collapse in DC recently, and a bunch of decks fell down in Montgomery County too. So the closing segment here, we've invited Gregory Elan to talk to us about what's been going on, and more importantly, what our responsibilities as contractors and designers are. Because the newspapers right away say, well, what's DCRA doing about this? Well, was it really DCRA's problem? Yeah, they issued the permits, but what about the builder that let the building collapse? So, Gregory, are you ready to take over?
Hi guys, how are you? Sorry for stepping in late. I had a meeting with my inspectors. Well, I can comment a little bit on that, and then I'm open to fielding some questions if that's the way to go. But yeah, it's been interesting because we have definitely had, well, let me step back and say I'm relatively new in the position with managing the illegal construction unit, but it's an important aspect of the building department because we deal with safety and we deal with sort of odd things that happen that are outside of the normal permitting and approval process. So when there's a safety issue or when there's something like a building collapse, we're definitely there on the scene and we're involved. And so I have a sort of situational awareness of some of these collapses that have happened in the last number of months. And one of the things that I'm noticing about them is that the ones we've had are freestanding, these 6 or 9 unit condo type buildings that are being constructed on what once were single family home lots. And the issue we've been having is with these strong wind gusts. We've been having concerns with the shear wall and the shear panels such that the building doesn't have rigidity. So, I mean, I can go in down the rabbit hole in many ways. Michael, is there a direction or you folks want to steer me a little bit?
Well, as the feet on the street, what should we be looking for and who should we be talking to when we do see something that's unsafe? Say we go out, somebody calls us to, look at a job and give them an estimate, and we see something that's just crazy.
Yeah.
What's our responsibility?
Okay. Well, that's the perfect question. Yeah. And I get all the crazies. in the constructing world. So yeah, if you see something that's out of the ordinary, something that's public safety, something that's impinging, or I should say encroaching on someone's adjacent property, or potentially about to or is damaging someone's property. You know, sometimes as a design professional and a builder, you'll recognize something when it's in an earlier stage, and you can see the trajectory of this problem before it metastasizes the way the public would not notice something till it's really exploded, if you will. Yeah, so what you want to do is with DCRA, we have a section on our site for the illegal construction. You fill out a form there, or you contact the 311. And the reason we go through this is rather than try to have a personal connection, you really want to get on the conveyor belt and get filed a formal, we call it a complaint, but in this case, it's a concern, right? And we have the ability to respond pretty promptly. In many cases, we're out the same day for things that are safety related. So you definitely want to file something with either the DCRA site for illegal construction or through the city's 311 system, and it gets routed to us. You can call the main DCRA phone number, and also you'll have an option for legal construction, and you can just get on the phone and talk to a customer service person. I recommend using the online option just because that's going to get something in record. It's going to appear on our radar pretty quickly, and then we monitor those coming in the queue, and we look for things that are higher priority because they're emergencies or they're safety related. You definitely want to notate the public safety concern or the imminent danger aspect. Any language like that is going to trigger an immediate escalation to something where we're going to dispatch people right away.
So to keep this simple for us, this is the same customer service messaging system that we would use to complain about a bathroom permit that's been sitting in plan review for a month and a half, or any other question we have.
No, it's not.
It's
No,
not.
it's not.
Okay.
It's not. There is a specific page on the DCRA site for illegal construction. So you want to look, and that's the language you want to use. You want to look for the illegal construction form and submit that way. So, and again, legal construction for us falls under usually 4 different categories. It's either operating with no permits whatsoever. That's illegal construction. Operating after hours, at night and crazy times, or anything that's a public safety matter, or anything that is a damage or encroachment on an adjacent property. Those 4 main categories are what illegal construction handles.
So this 9-story or this 9-unit condo that fell down, you said it was, and I can see how a gust of wind would come up. Was it properly designed once it was completed? Is this just a problem that it was underway and they didn't have enough support on it while it was being built, or?
So as I'm not a licensed engineer, I can only speak as another builder. I mean, I've been a builder in DC for a long time. So like many of you, I encounter construction, so I can speak from that perspective. And as far as my official position goes, it's under investigation. So we're coming to some formal conclusions about that right now. But the gist of it is, yes, the structure was not properly supported in its temporary state to withstand these huge 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts or whatever. My take on it, my personal take on it, is that it's a shear panel issue. These are very long structures. These are stick-built buildings, very long. And then both the front and the back of these buildings have a lot of penetrations in them. So you don't have a lot of rigidity left and right. And when you're not in a row attached with other buildings, but you're sitting there on your own,
that's all they're interested in.
the rigidity essentially is on the front and back in terms of shear panel. And from my take on it, from my take on it, that is something that probably should be beefed up. The shear wall rigidity of this style building, because they're also tall. You know, we're talking about 4, 5-story buildings.
Maybe
Hopefully get
that are
pictures for it.
only 17,
Hopefully
20
we get
feet
pictures.
They
wide.
won't go in the house. Mister.
So this
So
really
that's
wasn't,
Say the
They end
email.
up getting pulled left and
hey,
right.
Mike,
Answer
Mike.
like so,
Hold on.
it's a little bit on the piss side.
Mike is the, Mike, there you go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, someone's talking over the whole thing.
It was Mike Brown. This really wasn't a residential project though either, was it? This was a non-condo unit, so that doesn't fall under Mike Brown, does it?
No.
No.
Doesn't, I don't think it falls under you, Mike, right?
And that should have had a greater engineering review than our projects that we typically go through.
Yeah, I mean, there are some concerns that have been highlighted for me, which are that, for example, I had a collapse in March that was a similar kind of building as what went down the other day, and similar construction. And it was reviewed 2018, I think, and at that time, DCRA had an option that allowed you to allow for external review and external engineering and external authorization of those things. So there was limited review on our part on some of these structural concerns. That to me is an area that probably we could stand to beef up.
Okay. Has anyone else got any questions for Gregory? Now, remember, he's in charge of all the inspectors. So if you got any complaints about the inspectors or anything good to say,
Only the bad, my inspectors are the tough guy inspectors. No, it's, you know, I'm not in charge of the everyday inspection process. So your normal MEP inspections and such is not my niche. You know, I'm building department's 200 people. I'm about a dozen people over in the corner dealing with these
illegal.
illegal issues. Yeah. So I get a lot of the dumpster fire type issues, honestly.
I have a question. This is Ruben at Manor Park Construction. So my question is this. So like in this age of trying to, you know, and where jurisdictions are trying to, you know, quote, police better, you know, what about this, you know, and this does happen, but not often. But hey, our building permit, you know, at some point, you know, I don't know, the somebody knocked it off the window or something like that, something's missing. Instead of just rolling in and slapping a $4,000 fine, they could just look it up. But I've seen instances where they don't. It stops the project. You got to spend a month getting rid of that. I mean, like, can't there be any benefit of the doubt? Are we trying to be nicer, you know, these days?
Okay, yeah, well, fair concern. I mean, a lot of my challenge in this position is walking the line between the fact that we're a strange bird, right? DCRA is both a consumer protection agency and also a building department, right? I mean, that's part of our schizophrenia over here. So I acknowledge the frustration. I will say that after I've been here, I'm in my 4th month in this position. I have spent tireless amount of energy in the last 2 months streamlining and cleaning up what it's called the stop work order team. First and foremost, it means that there is situational awareness at the managerial level of all of the stop work orders that are rolling by, so that when there's an issue, when things get inappropriately or inaccurately tagged, that those things can be lifted or corrected promptly. I mean, like I say, I've been a builder for 20 years, so I very, you know, in DC, so I very much understand the pain point of having your job stopped midstream, particularly if it's excavation, concrete, you know, major aspects of the project that can be completely crushing for a job. So it's a valid question, valid concern. We do research for permits. In other words, it's not completely ignored, but consistency is a challenge. Certainly for my unit, we are very overwhelmed. I have over 1,000 open cases on my desk, literally. It's not a made up number. And so there's a lot to process, and that's not an excuse, but just to say that streamlining processes, making such that we can have situational awareness when a job is inappropriately tagged for,
Right.
for something that it really doesn't belong there, it can be lifted promptly. I feel the pain.
Right, lifting a mistake, and I mean, but like trying to chime in, lifting a mistake like that quickly would help out. Otherwise, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars. Now that doesn't know there's blatant violations, but yeah, but situationally, I like that. So thanks.
Any other questions?
All right. This has been a good meeting. Mike, did you tell me that you used to be a contractor also? So,
Yeah, we were a home performance contractor. We were energy efficiency people.
so, I think this is really encouraging that, DCRA feels our pain a little bit and has put people in position that are one of us. And hopefully you guys can make some real meaningful changes. And we're definitely a big fan of this call. This is a great first step. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, our members are jealous. They want the same thing to start taking place in Montgomery County and Fairfax. You're already raising the bar in the whole industry. So thank you, everybody, for participating in this. If you have any questions or suggestions for next month's topic, please send them on to Debbie, and she'll get them into the committee. But thank you all for attending, and thank you, Mike, and thank you, Gregory.
David?
Yeah.
Can you and Debbie stick around? And anybody who just wants to talk a little bit about checklists, I wanted to start kind of talking about that if you've got time.
Okay. Yep.
Just a very short minute or two.
And I have one request, please. If you get a chance, I would love for John Wyman, iPad 2, Dimitri, and Mariana to put your contact info in the chat, please. Thanks so much. Yeah, we can stay on. You guys can be on as long as you like.
What about me? iPhone.
I know who you are.
Thanks.
I've got your number.
Hey, and full disclosure, I never revealed this. I actually was a manager at DCRA for 13 years. I worked for Matt LeGrant, and I also worked for Paul Walters, who's gone now, but out in enforcement. So,
Well, zoning people, that's a whole different breed.
Yeah, but that's a nut we're gonna crack.
yeah, zoning's crazy.
All right.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone. And whoever wants to stay on, please feel free to.
Okay, so Mike, you want to start?
Yeah, so one of the things, I guess one of the starting kickoff points, and I just wanted to share this a little bit. This is a part of the background in our permit wizard that we're trying to build out so we can get some particular things. So for example, and I think it leads to what should be on the checklist. If you're doing a basement renovation, we're asking different questions. Are you replacing fixtures, adding fixtures, electric, adding, removing walls, etc., right? Well, what we need are pictures for the replacement. None of those items need pictures, but we need a contract agreement. We need a floor plan with the layout, including walls, doors, and windows, and a floor plan of the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical equipment. You could literally, depending on the work, put those on what, 2 pages?
Oh, well, you could put it all on the same page.
You literally could get them all on the same page. So that green section is what we're, putting together for, and we'll start testing it. If somebody says, I'm doing a basement remodel, they're going to be asked what kinds of things they're doing. If they did all of those new mechanical equipment, walls, electric and all, we would ask for that to be uploaded immediately. And I think we can turn that in 2 days.
Mhm.
So so my thought is, that's the kind of stuff that the checklist needs to be. Hey, you're doing a basement remodel. If you're doing all of these things, the floor plan's got to have a layout, shows the walls, the doors, and the windows. The floor plan has to show the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical equipment. It should be that simple, I think.
When you talk about basements, though, the things that come to my mind are obstructions, like what's the ceiling height, what are the beams, what are the pipes that are in the way, what's the egress in and out of it.
That's why you got the doors. That's why you have the windows, right?
Well,
I mean, I
do you
got
ever
this
ask for
shortcutted
ceiling
on
height?
what it needs to be, but you need to have the doors, you have to have sizes for all these things, granted. But it becomes, at least for me, kind of the basis of the things that we're looking for. I have, we've got the, you probably don't need to use the energy and green worksheet often. I mean, that's a massive document.
It really is. I'm sorry, just wanted to add, it's a massive document that is not very user-friendly.
Oh, now you're good. Those are fighting words.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think it asks for more than needed on what, a lot of the smaller projects, but you're kind of forced. I don't know if there's a way to streamline that as part of this process. That might be helpful.
I would hope that, as you develop, or as we develop these checklists together, there could be some very general questions that would shut it down right away. So if you're doing something simple,
Yep.
that would end the rest of the questions to it.
I think it's kind of structured that way a little bit, but maybe it could be a little bit more just sort of geared towards, the smaller projects. I think it kind of, there's some questions that the checklist has that kind of upfront lets you know whether it qualifies or doesn't, but maybe it could be a little bit more easier to, answer and sort of that way you kind of know it's not applicable.
I appreciate the feedback, but here's what I can tell you with all honesty. It took approximately 6 months to develop that. And I'm not going to be changing it for a few years just because of time. It's where it's at. I hear what you're saying, and there's probably ways we can get it smarter as we continue to develop. That's why this permit wizard, has some value, is as we integrate those things, we can go ahead and get some of that integrated. My guess is if we're able to do that, I'm probably looking at $100,000 that I have to get in the budget, because it would be third-party contractors. I'd have real good IT people would have to do that work. But I hear what you're saying for small projects. But I think the checklist can help guide that. I mean, we already, for an alteration level 1 and 2, don't ask for the energy and green worksheet.
I have a question.
That's progress. Thank you, Mike.
Go ahead, Melvin.
So the project that we have had in review, this bathroom renovation, I clicked basement renovation as a scope of work because we were doing more than just the bathroom. Is that what slowed this down from
Absolutely.
being, a couple of days?
Yeah, what's the permit number?
I'm looking at my application now, so I was.
What's the address?
I'm going to give you the permit number. I just got to back up here real quick in it. You would think the permit number would be right here where you could see it. The address is 2219 2nd Street Northwest. It only has one review left, and that's historic, and they've been sitting on it since last month.
Well, the reason it went the long route is because it's in a historic district. That's an automatic.
But it's all indoors.
Pardon me?
It's all indoors. It's an indoor renovation.
It has to get checked by them.
I know, but you would have thought they've had a month almost. They haven't even looked at it. It's not even a reviewer assigned in the space.
Yeah.
Have you
I'll
reached
check
out to
on it.
historic? Melvin, have you reached out to historic directly?
Yes, 3 times.
Who you reaching out to? I'm curious because they're usually really attentive.
I got a response, but it wasn't the reviewer. So it was a representative from OP, and oh, we're glad you reached out to us. We'll get the reviewer to look at it, but there's been crickets.
Yeah. Anyway, that's why it's not in the 1 or 2 day review line.
So if I would have just said bathroom, then we'd have been good to go. But then I kind
No,
of
you would not have. It's driven by the address being in the historic district.
So address in historic district won't be done quickly, no matter what the scope of work is.
It may, you just never know. But so for instance, the brains in the back of the thing is if a project has the alert for CFA or HPRB, and it's, or it's a change in use, or it has an addition underpinning, converting a basement to a separate unit, new building, swimming pools. These are things that are automatically going to go the project docs route. So anytime it's in a historic and it's driven off of the address, because it's not smart enough for us to know for historic addresses, whether or not there are some historic districts that the interior are also included in the plan review.
But see, that's kind of different. I mean, in the past, when you could do a paper application, you could get a review in a day. Not anymore.
Nope.
So I think walkthroughs don't even exist. That's what I want to tell my bosses, because they'll say, Melvin, is this a walkthrough? And I'll say
There
yes,
is
and I'll
no
be
such
dead
thing.
wrong. I'll be
There's
dead
not a
wrong.
walkthrough. Yeah, you're right to tell them that there's not a walkthrough, but I'll tell you, it depends on the project. And generally, I'm going to see what happened because there's something historic is just never 30 days, right? So
But it's not
somewhere
been 30. It's been more like 22 or something like that, 22 business days.
So it's not 30 days and it's in historic. Got it. Okay.
It'll be 30 business days, the 20th of this month.
Okay. So you're closer to 26 right now then.
I think we've got a lot on our plate to do, and I think this is a good example of one of those things that needs to be added to the list, because there is no walkthrough process anymore. So how can we get that? Because there used to be a guy sitting at the historic desk, you could put it in front of him and say, okay, this is inside a bathroom. Okay, I'll sign off on it, and you were done. So how do we get back to that kind of
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So here's the trade-off, David, is we doubled the number of projects that we consider a digital walkthrough. So you could come down here and sit all day and maybe get your plan approved that day, maybe, if it was all correct, right? And you could sit here all day while you waited for your number. We doubled the number of projects that we get done in less than 5 days because we expanded how we look for things. So yeah, that come down here, sit all day, hopefully you did it right and you get a permit to walk out with, that's gone. But there's a whole bunch of those projects that used to be at day 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 that are now being done in less than 5 days because we expanded it and have that efficiency. So yeah, there's a trade-off there. A walkthrough is probably 5 days right now.
So I can tell my boss that then. I've been dancing around 10 in 5 days with them. So
if it's a walkthrough type project, it's probably 5 days in most cases. And that's
Except
from the time you file the application, assuming you put up the plan set the day you get invited.
yeah, we didn't get that option on this particular one. And then it waited like 5 or 6 days before it even gave me an invite into Project Docs to upload.
so that hopefully will get corrected with the new
Yeah,
system.
listen, I'm not sure what you're saying could get corrected. I think
you
I'm not
guys should
sure.
keep Project Docs. I don't think you should change because We're used to it now.
Yeah, what I think is that if we cannot separate interior and historic, we're always gonna have that problem. Because if before we were able to do this in a day or two, and now you're saying there is no way we can do that, it gets very complicated for on these historic little projects like a bathroom or a kitchen, right?
So I guess my question back at you is what is, so in your planning process, why do you need a permit today or tomorrow? What is wrong with the week? If we can bring more into that category.
This is driven by my bosses. They want it now.
Yeah, but that's why I've had this conversation with several people this week who came down and thought they could walk through. I can't imagine that you're really at the point where you sell a job today, you drop the plans tomorrow, and you need the permit on the next day. It doesn't happen.
It's not quite like that, Mr. Brown, but I don't know. I guess I'm just a spoke in the wheel here. So
I know, I understand that. But when I look at, what we can accomplish, right? It's like if I can get a lot more people through in 5 days or less, I think that's a great trade-off as a whole.
Yeah, I think if we knew we could count on this permit being processed in 5 days, then we can build it into our whole job planning process and know that we're going to have it in 5 days. The problem is really the history of the whole thing of plans sitting in review for 3 months. And at that point, when you finally issued the permit, yeah, I was ready to start work the next day. I was waiting for that permit for weeks.
I understand that.
But that's not the way it is now. So
yeah, but the other thing I think we have to put in, we have to, just consider this. We did 44,759 reviews for the 5-day type jobs in the last 4 months. 95% of them were done within 2 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, we make mistakes and we have some that go longer, but 95% of 44,752 reviews in the last 4 months were done within 2 days.
yeah, I think we've been used to not having any response or accountability.
Mhm.
So, and it takes a while to get over that. And,
Yeah.
I talk to Melvin's boss all the time, and
Who's Melvin work for?
Landis.
Okay.
But people have long memories for the way things used to be. Like the change in inspectors has been remarkable. I have only used DCRA inspectors for probably the last 2 or 3 years. And I try to tell everybody else, stop using third-party inspectors. The DCRA guys are great. They call you in the morning, they'll be there, but they don't want to, they just remember the way things are.
Yeah, and that's why I said we're all gonna have to hold hands and jump off a bridge.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that's part of it, right?
Well,
And am I defensive about DCRA? There's absolutely sometimes I am. And I know we make mistakes, but 95% of the time we do it within 2 days. Okay, let's talk about the ones. And I'm willing, and I want to find out what happens. That's important to me.
Yeah.
It's like on the one that Melvin was talking about.
Yeah.
So
I
it's a
think
bathroom renovation. It's a bathroom renovation. It's a basement renovation, and it's in a historic district. That's
Yeah.
the things that triggered it.
Yeah. For all the good things that you guys are doing, where the system is breaking down is when it has to reach out to these other departments like historic or DOT or DC Water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I am literally always surprised if I hear a complaint about historic, because I know their response rate is at our level, because I run their numbers. The biggest problem is with, hey, listen, part of we will fix zoning a whole lot, because I'm going to have 2 zoning people working directly for me here, hopefully after October 1st with the new fiscal year. And that'll be a big improvement, because they're under the same heat that my folks are under.
Yeah.
DDOT.
Can I jump in and throw something into the mix of this conversation?
Yeah.
Sure.
Just 2 reflections. One, because my work for almost 20 years was almost all in historic districts in DC. You can't use third-party inspection in historic districts. So that's an interesting thing in DC. As a result, I didn't even bother with third-party when I was outside a historic district. And what I discovered is kind of just reflecting what you're just saying, is that, I was really pleased with the DCRA inspectors, and I get to know the same characters, and they were responsive, and, they had their quirks, this guy here and this guy there, but it was much more consistent experience that I had. I definitely encourage the use of DCRA proper inspectors for a number of reasons. The other thing is with historic, because of my work with historic, I learned a lesson a long time ago. This might just be a quirk about our process, but when you deal with a historic property, the way I think of it is, and someone had just said, oh, but it's an interior. Correct. Basically, historic is not going to necessarily care what happens as long as it's on the inside, but they have essentially veto power within a historic district. And my experience was, and I learned this long ago, that if I started with historic, I learned to go to historic, knock on the door, virtually speaking now you'd have to do it, and find out the person who handles that area and say, hey, I've got a project coming up. I'm going to be doing XYZ in this historic district property. I just want to throw the idea out to you. Any thoughts? And what will often happen is that historic person will have a comment or give you a direction about how to present your item. And then when you come up on the radar with their reviewers, they handle you completely differently, because there's an expression my dad had. My dad was a builder in New York when I was growing up, and I was raised Catholic. We have this expression called kiss the ring. It's you submit to the authority of this person. And this is me as a builder talking. And what I found is that, like, the historic guys like to be consulted relative to the historic district. And when you approach them first and give them a chance to give you some feedback, even before you put in your application, my experience just was always that really greases the wheels to get historic to just be like, all right, great, you're good, boom, move on to the rest of the process, and then don't get hung up on them. Just a comment.
I've had the same experience, and also with zoning too, and in Montgomery County as well as DC, but reaching out to these people beforehand and answering these questions and building a relationship with them, getting to know them. Then once it gets put in, I would be contacting right away. Hey, my plan went in for review and I got this bathroom. Can you sign off on it? They'll usually find the guy and nudge him and get rid of that.
And that's
it's all about getting it off the list and moving it on.
It is, because we want to move those things, but I think it's partly driven by what we deem. We have this term in DCRA, especially in my unit, where we talk about what we call bad actors. We've got developers and flippers who just are chronic problems for us. Okay. Well, then with historic, I wouldn't call them bad actors, but it's just people who are just not, I don't know, historically sensitive, whatever it is. And I'm a historic guy, but I think there's just something about when you have that rapport established, when you are the one who's proactive, when you go to, I learned this early in my game with DCRA, with historic. I always remember it was in my own neighborhood. I wanted to change the stairs going to my house. I thought, I took pictures of all these other houses, and I showed up and I did my application and I said, this is what I'd like to do. And they were like, oh no, you can't do that. And I thought, oh man, what did I do wrong? After that, never made that mistake again. I always presented the idea in a semi-informal manner via an email or a phone call. And that made all the difference. Just, it really greased the wheels. And then they felt like, oh, you're one of those guys who's thinking about our interests rather than presuming. Almost as if the act of presuming that you know what to do just gummed up the works. I don't know. And it's an informal piece of comment, but I just thought it would be relevant here.
Melvin, in your case, this is something the designers ought to be reaching out as they're beginning the initial design for the project. Why would you waste time designing something unless you know have had that conversation with historic?
Precisely.
So
That
you
really-
can put it back onto them.
I can't do that because I handle the permitting and they hand it off to me after my reviews and the
Well,
other parties in our office. So with that said, I'm looking at my project docs current workflow routing slip. So this went in on the 17th of last month. It cleared pre-screen review and went into actual review 6/22.
yeah, but you know, talk to Chris and Ethan about the process with historic, that it's not just a permit issue.
They rely on me. for
I
this
know, we'll tell
information.
them it's not a permit issue, it's a design issue, that they really need to reach out and have a dialogue with them so that it goes through the permit process at the appropriate time without any glitches.
Yeah, I'm one of the designers here with Melvin, so I could back you up on that, Melvin. Because I do feel like it is our responsibility to,
But the
get in
thing
front
is,
of it.
this has not been an issue before this job, this particular job, okay?
Yeah.
I'm just not understanding, and neither are the two designers and the production staff that, you know, we have a schedule we're trying to keep too. And they're like, why is it taking so long, man?
And this
I
is
can
an
understand.
interior, this is an interior job, right?
It's interior.
So it sounds to me like it's a fly in the ointment. There's something wrong. I don't know why it's getting dropped. But it doesn't make sense to me that it would.
I think it's odd that there's no reviewer listed.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I'd stay on that for sure. If there's no reviewer, I'd be relentless about getting that.
Juliana Jackson
plugged in.
is the OP representative that reached out to me after my first email, and she said she would look into it. And I'm sure they're looking into it, but that doesn't take away the fact that production is sweating me about this permit, and the people that sold this job are sweating me about this.
I would not, when you say, I'm sure they're looking into it, maybe they're not. Maybe it's, you know, the absence of the reviewer would, I think it's your valid concern, that the absence of a reviewer would make me take pause and think,
Well, I
get
guess
that piece, get them to get that piece to you so that you know.
I
well,
sent an
who
email
is
to
doing-
DC Cares, and I got a hit back from that because there were two reviewers still outstanding, zoning and historic. Well, zoning approved yesterday. You would think historic would have looked at it by now. They have not.
So just a couple of quick things. I mean, historic, you need to work them. There's no doubt about that. So this is a basement remodel, including a new sauna in the basement as well.
Yes.
I mean, it's not as simple as a project as,
Yeah, but it should get approved like that because it's a sauna. Come on, you know.
no, I mean, it's everything. This is not just a bathroom. Here's the thing, Melvin. There is a problem with historic because they haven't assigned it, and that's going to be easy. I'm going to drop a note to them. But one of the things that I need, and when I talk about holding hands and jumping off bridges, I need full, accurate stories when I hear it, right? So for you to have said that with all the people on the call at that time, that this was a simple bathroom remodel and it's taken 30 days. One, we're at day 18 today. All the reviews by DCRA were completed, I think, in about day 4 or 5, if I look at it. But it wasn't just that simple bathroom. So I don't think that's fair.
Okay, I
So
made a
when
mistake, but I
we're-
corrected myself in this session. I went and got all the information so I could be truthful with all of you all who are still here.
Yeah, but that's why we all are in this thing together, and that's what I want the calls for. But
I still think that this is taking too long.
I don't disagree.
I don't think anybody's disagreeing with you that it's taken too long. But what I'm writing down on my list of topics for future talks is the relationships that DCRA has with the other agencies, and in order to solve those, we're going to have to bring in people like we did last month with DOEE and lead paint. And
Yeah, and I can get the historic people to join us.
yeah.
Again, this is a first for historic, not to,
I know,
be the
they're-
last one out.
Listen, I think they have a higher efficiency rate than I do.
And I wouldn't argue that. It's weird. It's very weird.
It is. It doesn't fit. There's something off. There's something off.
It's a first and it's weird. It's never happened before.
Well, have you ever had a response with people listening to you the way they are right now?
No,
Okay, things are changing.
things are changing. I agree. That's why I stayed on.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I like going, with people about stuff, and I know we can improve, and I want to. I like hearing it.
Mhm.
PC.
To change the subject, after our meeting with DOEE, I have spent some time working on what I think would be a couple of good suggestions for them and how to
Good.
make some changes. Mike, can I set up a meeting with you to review what I've done? I think that'd be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, that'd be good. Hey, I just put in who to send a note to for historical. It's in the chat, Melvin. Send an email to Kim.
Send an email to Kim.
Yep, I just put her email address in there.
Can I ask?
I don't see anything here.
It's in the chat to everyone.
In the chat.
Oh,
Is Andrew
Technology.
Wiley in the office? He's structural.
Who?
Andrew Wiley?
Yeah, he's a structural
I
reviewer.
just want to make sure he's there. I've been waiting to hear back from him. I haven't heard back from him. He's the only remaining approval. So I guess I'll hold tight. Hopefully he'll get
So
back.
what day is it on?
Oh, we're past. He got this on June 11th. So I was hoping to hear something by Monday but I said, well, maybe because Monday was the day everybody was heading back. I said, well, I would understand with everything going on. So I emailed him just to say if you could help us move it along. And I was hoping to hear back at least sometime this week.
So it's at day 24 right now. And Andrew hasn't broken any of his SLAs in probably 6 months, maybe longer. So it'll get done in the next 5 business days.
Okay, that's what I'm hoping.
No, it will.
Okay.
Why hasn't he answered the email though?
Well, I'll tell you this from my own comments, and I've, we're working through some issues with Howard County, and I know the other guy. DCRA, I have to say, has come so far along. I want to extend my appreciation to you, to Gregory and the team, because I think a lot of times, we talk so much about all the things that aren't working. But I want to take a moment to talk about the things that are, and to say thank you, because it's a lot worse. I mean, there's not even a project doc system to work through that makes sense in most of these other areas. So the fact that it's functioning, it took us a little while to get up to speed, but we're getting the hang of it. We're working through the kinks. I'm feeling very optimistic about what's happening. I've been in government. I've been involved for many years. And so I've been on both sides. And so again, I want to say thank you, Mike, and Gregory for taking the time, and Debbie for taking the time to even pull us together, and you as well, Mr. Merrick. And we're making progress. I mean, even with the general contractors, the renewal process, I was so pleased on how much more efficient that was. It took a few days to work that through. We've come a long way, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. I want to say that for the record.
Hey, at 5, thank you very much. And at 5 o'clock, I'm on a meeting with the business licensing people. I'm going to give them kudos.
Yeah, big thumbs up on that one, definitely.
Yeah, because I know they're they did a lot of work trying to improve their systems.
And that was great.
So anyway,
Well, Mike, when you're talking to them, remind them that in Maryland, I can renew my license in about 5 minutes online.
I think,
Sorry, had to put
We're
that in.
making progress.
I will tell them that. They'll be interested in hearing it.
They do that because they do a credit check. And they base most of their decisions on you being able to pass a regular credit check for your business. And I think that's a great accountability standard for a business.
I have a whole bunch of ideas about things on licensing that we ought to be doing.
I think that's great, but there are a lot of businesses that are smaller that may not be in a NAV system where their credit is completely established. It doesn't mean they're not good contractors. It doesn't mean they don't have the capability. So I think when you start using credit as a basis, you end up in that same situation again, where what about that small guy that's starting out, that has the potential, that really is building his credit profile? I mean, just as a contractor ourselves, it took us years to be able to get a line of credit. It does, if those things are not just extended, like, here you go. So
Well, they don't say no to you if you fail the credit test, but then there's more questions, and they don't turn you away, but.
Well, I'm just saying, I think when you say credit, we want to be careful. And what does that look like when you're saying credit? What does that mean? Is it based on the the NAV systems as they have it, or Duns and Bradstreet? And everybody has developed a profile where Duns and Bradstreet is very expensive.
Yeah, no, I think they just use Equifax, but what they're looking for is enough money to sue the guy at the end if he really screws up.
I mean, I think there are a lot of ways to make sure the small guy is not squeezed out of that process. And credit blanket is just, that to me is one sure way that a lot of folks would be squeezed out. That's just my, my own sort of experience in my comments on that. But I'm sure that you're open to other options that can.
We did our work in New York, and Rockland County, well, actually all of the counties had the same requirement, but Rockland County was the most fastidious. In order to get your license, you had to have current workers' comp insurance and liability insurance. So you showed that, except it was in their system. So the day that was on the sheet that you submitted that it expires, if you didn't send them the new sheet, they took away your license until you did. And that I thought was a good consumer protection. It was a pain for my office, right? So then I started with my insurance guy. It's like, hey, I needed a year dating. I don't have to do this every 6 months.
Mike, since you raised that subject, if you are talking to them, the last time I renewed, they asked for my certificate of insurance, which expires in a couple of months after the renewal period. I had to go to my agent and tell him to change the dates on it. And he said, I'll do this because it's DCRA and I know that's what they want to see, but it doesn't mean anything because your insurance still expires on this date. But they wanted to see expiration date 2 years in the future because that's what the license period was. And the insurance industry has learned that and accommodates you by lying on their forms.
I can't believe they're doing that. That's incredible.
Yeah, I will be glad to provide more information. You can look at my renewal record and pull up my workers' comp and see it.
There's just so much going on with computers. I can't imagine why it's not an automatic, because like on workers' comp, all I had to do was put all on both of my insurances, I just listed everybody who got it, and every 6 months I renewed it, automatically got sent out to them.
Yeah. Well, DCRA does not allow it to be sent automatically. It has to be submitted with a license application.
That's horrible.
And if the insurance agent sends it to DCRA, it gets lost in the shuffle. And again, this is unique to DCRA because everybody else would not accept it if you handed it to them because they'll figure you could forge it yourself. So.
Okay, hey folks, I have a 4 o'clock I got to run to. This has been grand. Same
Thank you,
time
guys.
next month.
Talk
All
to you all
right,
later.
thank you all. I'm gonna stop recording. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
Take care, all.
much.
Debbie,
right.
can you stay on?
Sure, let me stop recording.
Thanks for having us, guys. We'll see you again.
All right.
Thank you.